Welcome to the Forge podcast. I am Brian Glidden, the Chief Communications Officer for Coforge, and I'm excited to have today with me two individuals that will discuss how to secure the future enterprise from legacy to quantum. And I have both HFS and Eclypses with me. David Cushman is the editor-in-chief of HFS Hot Tech and the executive research leader at HFS. And Adam McElroy is the chief storyteller at Eclypses, one of our partners. Recently HFS produced with Eclypses this hot tech report, and we'll get into that. But to get started, I always like to ask a couple of questions to all of my guests that are a little bit more personal. And so the first is around what I call life moments. So everybody has them both personally and professionally. And if you wouldn't mind, if each one of you could share one or two of those moments that have defined your path early in your career, or something significant that shaped your approach to leadership or technology. And David, why don't you go first?
Sure. I suppose one that always sticks with me is maybe a negative one, actually. It was some years ago. I was working in social media. I was one of those people who believed it would change the world, and kind of maybe it did, but maybe not in the way I was hoping. And I got invited to an after-dinner thing in Silicon Valley. I'd just started a new job in the UK, and so I'm committed to the new job, right? And this gathering was for about a dozen people, including the likes of Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, the guys that were the Twitter founders, F. Williams, Bizstone, a number of other folk that ended up becoming like super legends, and I turned them down. Now I can't be bothered to fly all the way to Silicon Valley just to go and have dinner, talk to them, and come back. So that's my kind of sliding doors, what an idiot moment. And that maybe taught me to grasp opportunities a little more firmly. That's the lesson I learned from that. And I think today that's increasingly an important thing for everyone, because everything is now a learning experience. So take as much of it as you can.
I think we all have one of those, at least one of those experiences. Adam?
Yeah, this is my second career, so I think probably a life moment for me was standing on a viewpoint looking across the Berlin Wall into what was then East Germany with some of my colleagues, and watching the East German border guards watching us through binoculars, and then putting his binoculars down and gesturing to us to move closer together for the team photograph. And that was a moment where, maybe not humorous, but at least there was someone working for a totalitarian regime who found a moment of levity in what he was doing every day.
That is not something that I expected. So my other question is around, based on some of your learnings, any advice? I was just talking to my daughter who graduated from college this spring, and she was asking me how she should approach her career. I've actually got two. I've got a son studying AI in grad school, and they're both probing me about what does the future look like, and what advice would you give yourself, your younger self, who's just starting out in the tech industry? David.
Interesting. I have a daughter who's in her second year. Well, no, actually going into her third year at university when she goes back. She is not studying a tech subject at all. Neither did I. I think it's quite important to actually equip yourself with some of the softer skills, some of the what we used to call the classics, liberal arts type skills. It seems to me that We are heading to a world in which 95% of what all of us do in a kind of knowledge work way, in a technical way, will be done better by a machine very quickly. That's coming very fast. So the thing that will differentiate is actually our very human capabilities that are beyond what an LLM can do. And the LLMs are really good at problem solving, but we're really good at problem finding. And that is where I think focus some of your time and effort and energy there. I think the rest of the world will catch up with this view before too long, and recruitment processes will change, because right now they're very fixated on must-have STEM skills. But actually, you don't need jack of all trades, and you don't need STEM in every role, but you're going to certainly need people who think a little differently. The old Steve Jobs line about think differently, I think, is going to become increasingly important, because that's where the differentiation comes from.
Adam?
Yeah, slightly different take from David, perhaps, but certainly along similar lines around the soft skills. I think the biggest piece of advice that I was given, that I would always share with others from my experiences: don't take it personally. You can't save them all. No matter what a wonderful job we think we're doing, or indeed our colleagues in the industry are doing, smart people sometimes do dumb stuff, and there's only so much we can do to help them. It's not our fault. We will continue to do our best individually, and leave it at the desk at the end of the day.
That is sage advice. So let's dive into the hot tech report, and maybe what we're seeing a little bit in the marketplace around data security. I'll set the stage. I will say this. I was listening to a podcast this week with Jamie Dimon of JPMC, and he was talking about, it was a conversation with someone from Databricks, and he was very, very clear. It's all about the data and how they can't do anything in AI without data, and data protection is key. So, David, why don't you tell us just a little bit, what is the Hot Tech Report, and how often do you produce it? How do you choose individuals for that? And just a little background on the report itself.
Or have an impact in particular markets. And it's very focused on impact, right? We're not so interested in a kid in a bedroom with $2 billion behind them if they've done nothing yet. We want to see firms that are actually creating value for the enterprises they're working with. So that's an important criteria. There's some numbers around how big they can be before they're off the scale of this particular program. But it's the idea is that we introduce them to both our enterprise community and our systems integrated community, and that way they get to build out their success. We advise them along the way. We support with inquiry support, and we have like a slimmed down SAE model, which is our strategic advisory engagement model for them to work with us, because we want to make them a success. If we call you out as a hot tech, we want to make sure that you succeed in the market, because our reputation lies on it too. And so from a client point of view, an enterprise leader's point of view, we build this into a database. There's a hot tech database that's building. We've got 250 in there now. And this acts as a shortcut. So it's a way in which they can look up for firms that they might want to partner with, or maybe even buy into, acquire. And it's a kind of first pre-validation. It means at least that HFS analysts have spoken to these guys. We've heard their story. We've had the presentations. We've had the briefing. But critically, we've also gone and spoken to their customers, because we don't just take their word for it. So in Adam's case, we won't just take their presentation for it at face value. We will then go off and speak to some of their customers to get a validation from their point of view that what they're saying is actually true. So that's, in a nutshell, it's a quick validation of an emerging player's impact in the market.
So, Adam, tell us a little bit about the core mission of Eclypses. So, you're in this report, and I know the Eclypses technology really well. I had that aha moment the first time I went through it and realized that this was something that was incredibly special. Tell us a little bit about your core mission and what fundamentally separates you out from more traditional cybersecurity.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So our key mission is we protect data in transit across any network using today's technology prepared for tomorrow. And that means we're using the Crystal's Kyber algorithm from NIST, embedded into a very elegant and simple solution which deploys in under an hour for a cloud architecture and protects data from the application layer. And that is the difference. It's application first, data first, and always. We're talking about embedding data protection within the data, and we're protecting the data, not the pipe. And that's where the key difference from traditional cybersecurity data protection lies. That has always focused on protecting the means of transmission rather than the data itself.
So I said to you that this next wave of AI is all about the data. Adam, how do you see Eclypses fitting into protecting that data and being able to leverage it for this next wave of AI that we're seeing, Gen AI and agentic work, et cetera?
Yeah, the authenticity of the data in the next generation of AI is going to become even more critical. I mean, it's always been said that you can get every answer you want from the internet. Well, now an internet powered by AI will give you some very creative answers, and will help us solve the problems that we find every day. But how can we trust the data? It needs to be authentic. The AI needs to be trained in reputable sources. And also, how do I know that I'm consuming data from the AI I think I'm consuming data? Let's go beyond VPNs and start to embed trust in the data itself and not just the way that I'm connecting to what I think is the AI that I might be using. So it's all about building that trust, making sure the data is authentic, and providing the quality service from the AI and enabling that consumer to make the most informed decision.
So, David, in reading some of your work, you talked about the traditional security tools for those centralized heritage systems, and Adam actually talked about it's protecting the data, not the pipes. This is not your standard perimeter protection. This is something different. Can you elaborate a little on why legacy models are no longer sufficient and why the rise of API-driven data protection and the maybe some angle towards what we were just talking about, AI?
So I think the biggest challenge facing any organization when it's trying to make particularly agentic AI work is the data sources are being created on the fly in many cases. So yes, you've got to access the data that you need for the purpose right now. And therefore, the focus of your attention should be on that data, not all of your data, not the data everywhere, but the data that you need to fulfill the agent's purpose in that case. So to that end, what Eclypses does is fits really neatly in solving the problem for the data that's actually the problem right now. So I think a lot of what we've heard and what actually terrifies people a lot about large-scale AI transformation is the thought that they have to get absolutely all of their data perfect tomorrow. That's not the case, not the expectation. It's actually I would argue that data, yes, is a really significant part of making AI work, but there's some really significant other parts too, right? That are about process, and they're about people, and they're about skills, and those elements are left to one side at your peril. Because if all you're doing is fixing your data and not sorting your processes, you're just going to end up creating more technical debt. In fact, each agent you build is going to be another technical debt, built very fast and aging very quickly, because it will become out of date very quickly indeed. So the whole you could argue a lot of what we have in our legacy stacks right now is just not fit for purpose as we move into that new world. Think about that, solving for the data I need at this time. That is a complete shift from I'm having a huge data warehouse, or I'm spending a fortune on storing all this data, which, frankly, we've built a huge industry around. The challenge now is that you only need that data for the set of variables that are live right now. And we talk about AI is now much better at handling ambiguity than the stock models were. And a lot of that is built on, we would have databases that were organized in certain ways, and that meant we were shaped to do our work in certain ways, and we built software on top of it that was designed to do just an A, B, C, D process. And it made all organizations very similar. So we lost that differentiation layer that I talked about earlier with the human element that's so important. So we've got to see all of this in a larger context. But if we narrow down into the data problem, I think it really genuinely is about just focus on the data you need to do the job you're trying to achieve. And then things become a little more kind of digestible and doable. And it stops the old argument of, you'll have seen many a CTO coming to the end of their tenure thinking, I'm not sure I've got time or capital to make this fix happen. But if you think about it only in terms of what you need to make the value that you're trying to deliver, then you do have time. You don't have that excuse anymore, right? It's not something that you're going to let the next guy handle that one, right? That's not an acceptable position anymore. And I think it's tools like Eclypses have offered that make this doable, that make it real now, in a way that it wasn't even 5-10 years ago. It was a problem too big to solve. So we built up this data debt alongside our tech debt, and that each kept feeding the other.
So we hear a lot of those stories, David. Coforge is in the business of helping organizations become what we call intelligent businesses. And a lot of the struggle they have is that debt that you're referencing. And so it's refreshing to hear you talk about that. And, what one of the points that you're making is about data in transit versus data at rest. And Adam, why don't you talk a little bit about the cryptographic models that really don't make sense anymore? I mean, I want to add another element to this, which is just going to blow things up, and that is that quantum piece to this. Because if you're seeing the power of technology overpower what exists today, how are you addressing those cryptographic models and that data in transit piece?
Yeah, we're very much following the lead from the national security agencies from the major economies around the world, who have a very consistent message that RSA, Diffie-Hellman, elliptic curve will be either already compromised or vulnerable to compromise by quantum attack by 2030. And there are well-respected cryptographers who have a different point of view to that. But ultimately, we're following the lead of the national security agencies who are influencing the agendas of government, regulators, and the major corporations around the world who power the digital economy. And whether that's the major cloud platforms, the financial interconnections, or critical industry, there is this rising wave of movement away from those. I hate to think of them as old because we're talking about 1970s, 1980s technology, but effectively they're going to be sunsetted by 2030. And for the major financial networks, government, and critical industry, it won't be acceptable for them to be used. Now, maybe the quantum horizon gets pushed back, but we see new announcements every week from IBM, Google, Microsoft showcasing their developments. And what are the things that we're not hearing from others who may also be making similar advancements? So that's what catalyzed the creation of our technology and led us to adopt a quantum resistant algorithm, Crystal's Kyber, now ratified as FIPS 403, inside our own certified solution. And we then take it another step. Rather than just encrypting, we're using something called micro token exchange, where we then additionally tokenize the data so that even if the encryption were to be broken in 20, 25 years' time, the data is still completely useless. It is redundant at that point. Unless it has been reconstructed by its intended recipient, a tokenized data stream is still resistant to a brute force attack. As far as we know today, quantum is an exciting world. There are some amazing developments around the uses of quantum, not just for security, which are going to amaze us in the next 5 years, let alone the next 10. So we're all preparing together for that anticipated horizon. And what can we do without completely re-engineering our data centers? How can we protect things today without re-architecting our networks? So rebuilding a network is going to be a long and complex process, requiring skill. And perhaps this talks to David's point about training, skills, culture, capacity to deliver those changes. Or could a tool like Eclypses be employed as a proxy across existing networks and really elevate a security posture today?
So along those lines, I know micro-token exchange, or MTE, as Eclypses likes to call it, is incredibly robust, but also easy to deploy. So this is not a 3-month, 6-month, 8-month enterprise purchase and implementation. This is in some respects AI native in that you are ready for prime time and able to address this immediately or faster, so to speak, which is the world we live in today. Can you talk about what that means, and in terms of a client that's engaging you, and how quickly this can be up and running and addressing that data in transit?
Yeah, for sure. So we still expect our clients to do their standard project management and change management, which will vary by industry and is good practice. But when it comes to the engineering, the deployment of our technology, typically it's as quick as going to your cloud marketplace, selecting our product within your tenant, adding it to the subscription you already have, and within 15 minutes, it will be deployed into your container, as we are natively containerized, and we can be deployed anywhere where Docker or Kubernetes is available. And in those major cloud platforms, it's certainly within an hour by the time you've run through your test script. And then we're ready to scale, and we scale laterally as your architecture scales today. We have no dependency on load balancers or caches. We are native and available today in AWS and Azure markets.
David, in the report I read, HFS said that MTE can fundamentally elevate an organization's defensive posture. What is it that you find most compelling about MTE as compared to some of the traditional methods that we've talked about?
I think it's the future-proofing element of it. Not only are you fixing for problems today, you're fixing for problems that are likely to come down the road. There's the thinking ahead of what the hell might quantum mean. Right? That's a really challenging question. You can make some stabs at it, but as far as we can ascertain, finding a way of making that data redundant in the future if someone does hack it is really powerful. You can see this playing out in even the conversations we're seeing driven by the US AI paper that's just come out. There's very much a drive towards American data becoming some kind of free exchanged object. There's going to have to be a level of confidence instilled in that, because a lot of the world kind of lost a little bit of confidence in accessing its data from the US because of the whole concerns around tariffs and what if someone switches off my data flow tomorrow. So there is a whole world of confidence that needs to be rebuilt into even large-scale data like that. Even concerns you hear from some industries like the banking and finance sector, if you're sharing your data with OpenAI, with Microsoft, it gets stored somewhere outside of your world for a short period. And you want to make sure that you're not just indemnified for that, but you're guaranteed that your data isn't going to leak somewhere and someone can hack it. So I think there's an increasing demand for exactly this kind of solution. And it seems to me that if you can guarantee that your data cannot be hacked, this is essentially the message of MTE, then that has to be something that most right-thinking boards will be considering on their risk register now. And the whole threat of having your data taken, manipulated, controlled is around number 2 on the list of CEOs' concerns right now. And it's only suppressed at the moment because of concerns around global politics and, are we facing a war here or a war there? They're big kind of supply chain concerns that keep people away. But normally it's kind of number 1 concern amongst CEOs, and I would expect it to get back there pretty quickly as well.
So are there, David, are there particular enterprises that you see? I know anybody could benefit from MTE, but are there enterprises that you see either regulated or legacy that you think can benefit more from the use of MTE?
I think I'm hoping you're still hearing me okay, by the way, because my speakers have done a weird thing. But I think that the kind of industry sectors that you would expect to jump on this would be the ones that are traditionally most concerned about the protection of their data. So that's BFS, it's defence, it's actually quite a lot of manufacturing and logistics, those kind of areas as well, where you can't have someone taking control of your machines, for example, because that's scary and dangerous. So I think it's anywhere, and this is where the whole question of agentic raises its ugly head, because once you're introducing agents that do their own planning in any organisation, then suddenly you are also facing similar kind of control issues. And so whilst I think it's been a concern of the traditional industries for some period, I was hearing in the last 6 months or so, even firms that would have been less concerned about even their customer data are now becoming more concerned. And I'm thinking the retail sector, it's rising in that space too. So it's almost like yes, there's a kind of hardcore, but it's spiraling out from there pretty rapidly as more and more people understand how much of their value is built on their data.
I never thought of this until I was actually talking to the CEO of Eclypses. And now I think of it every time I get in a rental car and I connect to CarPlay and it asks me to sync my contacts. And I see all of the other phones that are still listed in the profile. And I know that my data, and maybe more than just my contacts, is probably sitting out there in someone's less than secure environment. And that is a scary thing. So we're running short on time. I wanted to ask you both if there's one thing that you can give as a takeaway or a call to action for these enterprise organizations, what they can do with their data, how to protect it. That obviously MTE is one piece of that. Is there something that you see from a technology standpoint that is absolutely critical for these enterprises to do? David, why don't we start with you?
I think the one that springs to mind because of where we are in the world right now is audit for your exposure to foreign agents, shall we say. Right? I think in the US in particular, firms are going to come under pressure to prove that their data is not going to feed some Chinese firm. And I genuinely think that will become an area for that audits are important for, and you have to have a plan for how you might do without them. So there's that data risk as an international threat. I think is you ain't going to have a choice about that. This is going to become, because it's being led from the top in the US administration, that's going to be something that it also drives, of course, more money to Silicon Valley, but it's going to be an area where firms are going to have to, as someone said to me, get on the bus or get run over. And I can see that certainly in the US. And the impact of the US is so great that I would imagine that is going to have impact in many other markets too. So I would look there first. Are you actually, it's a simple thing you can do. How much of your data is going to places you're not sure about, and certainly prioritize anything that's coming that has an attachment to a Chinese business.
Adam, I know the easy answer is deploy MTE, but are there things that you would say to a CISO or to someone who is responsible for security that they should be doing other than that, doing regular audits or bringing outside resources? Tell us what you see as a solid measure.
So from my previous life as the head of cyber risk in a European bank, and very much the CISO's conscience, there's some great advice out there from the national security agencies in Australia, in Singapore, in the US, across Europe, and they're all advocating, do an audit, do a review, build your cryptographic bill of materials. My advice is that's great. You don't have to wait until you've finished to get started. You already know what your high profile apps are. You already know what your high profile network links are. And with a product like Eclypses available on the cloud, it's a very quick thing to try. So sheet it, test it, get started, start to build confidence. David mentioned the board. Build your confidence in your board risk committee, build it in your executive and your non-executive, because the closer we get to 2030, the fewer people there will be available to help fix the things that you have today.
So both of you are partners of Coforge, valued partners of Coforge. And I just want to extend my thanks to both of you. I know, David, we can go out on hfsresearch.com. We can find you on LinkedIn. Any other platforms that you use regularly, X or Instagram, anything like that?
I've kind of abandoned X. You'll mostly find me on LinkedIn, and it's David.Cushman. It's David Cushman, simple as that on LinkedIn. I managed to get that one before the rest of the world's David Cushmans came after it.
Well, we love HFS. We are a strong believer and partner of the organization, and I have been working with Phil for many, many years, and will continue to do so. So I appreciate you coming on today and talking to us. Adam, tell us where we can find you and learn more about MTE.
Obviously on eclypses.com, but search for us on the marketplaces at Azure and AWS, and learn more about us. We've got some great videos demonstrating just how quick and effective our installation is and how we can bring data protection to life today.
Awesome. Well, thank you both very much. I appreciate you coming on and to the Forge podcast. And I look forward to talking to you again at some point in the future where we may be looking back and laughing at some of the comments we've actually made.
I imagine we will. Hope so. Thanks very much,
Great
Brian.
stuff. Thanks, Brian.